All right. Hopefully that fixed the audio. Hopefully that fixed my audio, everyone.
Hopefully that fixed my audio, everyone.
There it is.
Hopefully that fixed my audio, everyone.
There it
Hopefully that
is.
fixed my audio.
Okay. So now I have audio, but no people. All right. Sorry, everybody, that I screwed it up. All right. Should be good now. Let me make sure everything's popping and populating on my thing here. There we go. Okay, good. I'm glad everyone made it over. I'm sorry that there was some audio stuff going on there. That was weird. That's what I get for not testing this out before I actually try and do anything. Thank you for hanging in there. Appreciate it, and I'm glad to have you all here with me. So yes, yay! There's a lot of people jumping in. I didn't lose too many people, hopefully, thankfully. Did lose a little bit, but it looks like we're getting everyone coming back in, so that's good. Hello and welcome, and thank you everyone for joining me this Sunday afternoon. For me, depending on where you guys are, might be a different time, but thank you for joining me for Sunday afternoon. Also, light has happened. I guess the sun decided to come out, and I look horrible. Maggie, first person to review Star Trek Mime. I mean, I would love to. It's like, so yeah, thank you for sticking with me and jumping over with the audio stuff. So yes, just to give a quick download to everyone, this is going to be starting to be a more monthly thing. I want to do more regular live streams because I want to be able to talk to all of you, to have some fun time just interacting with everybody, and also talk about stuff that I don't usually get to rant about in my videos, because I usually rant about things that are interesting to me and a lot of other people find interesting, but I'm also like, I have a billion opinions on everything about how much Geralt and the Bard and the Witcher are totally hot for each other, and I adore that. So yeah, I just need to rant about that in some place. And then also, what this is going to be is a ask me anything type of style thing. So I know there was a few questions that I saw in the other live stream before I had to reboot the stream that I'll try and remember and bring up again here. And I also have some questions from my Patreons. A few of you I see are in the chat as well. And so I will get a chance to answer those questions first. And then once I finish answering the questions, I only have 3 this time, so they're relatively short. But once I answer the questions from my Patreons first, then I will start answering questions that come up in the chat that people ask. So feel free to leave any questions. I can't guarantee I will get to every question that you guys ask, but I'll try and scroll through and answer as many as possible, and also discuss anything that comes to mind. Also, one other thing I will say, and I know you guys are wonderful and don't care, but for me, my own personal stuff, this set looks awful. And so I'm moving to a new apartment in 2 months anyways, so I'll be setting up something nicer for these monthly live streams going forward. So other than my little, Enterprise E here, I will have a little bit more than crazy stuff. And yeah, I will, Wellington Smith, I will not be giving any direct spoilers for Witcher or Star Wars. I will, maybe if someone wants, I will discuss my thoughts on Star Wars. I'm actually going to be doing a whole video on Rise of Skywalker in the near future. So if anyone's worried about specific spoilers for things, don't worry about that. I will try and stay away from anything major here or there if I get to anything. All right. And I want to just say thank you. And I agree with you, Anna. Witcher was great. And I'll get to my thoughts on Star Wars in a video in a little bit later here, but I actually really liked Rise of Skywalker. It was wonderful. And I know that's going to make some people very angry, but for me, I quite enjoyed it, and I'll explain why. Okay, sorry for me ranting and raving for a little bit here. I guess that's the whole point of a live stream, is just to hear me rant about stuff. So I guess that's what you're all here for. So I'm going to start answering these questions from Patreon first. Like I said, if you want to get your questions prioritized in the live streams, if I may hawk my wares a little bit, please give over on my Patreon. It really helps me out quite a bit. I do have some financial stuff. I do have some surgeries I'm going to be getting this year that are expensive. So, and also allows me to do more stuff with this channel, helps me support myself, things like that. So if anyone wants to help me out financially, Patreon's a great way to do that, and it really means a lot. And you get to have your questions read first. So first up, my first question that I have here is from Wellington Marcus, who I know you're in the stream right now. And your question over on Patreon was, what do you think of cyberpunk as a genre? Do you like it as a whole? Do you have any recommendations or a do not read / watch list? So I will be very fair. I am not the biggest aficionado of cyberpunk, and that's not because I don't love it. I do quite like it, especially like the aesthetic. I mean, anytime I go to like any convention, they always have those like cyberpunk hats and like clothing, and I'm like, I would really love to do a cyberpunk cosplay, and I really should, and they should do a cyberpunk video at some point. I almost like half the time I want to do like more like dressy stuff, and I'm starting to do more dressy stuff in my videos, like getting more costumes. But sometimes I just want to do one where I'm like, I have a weird costume and just it has nothing to do with video, and it's just the strangest thing ever. And just be in like a cyberpunk outfit, but it's like I'm talking about Harry Potter or some nonsense. So I do love cyberpunk. Getting back on track, I do love cyberpunk stuff, and I do have some recommendations here. But overall, it's not the one that I'm like, I can't give you like a deep dive on cyberpunk. Let's go watch some cyberpunk. But yeah, no, I can't give you a deep dive on cyberpunk just because that's not my thing. I think like the deepest I know is like the Neuromancer novel by William Gibson, maybe. Thanks. I'm such a dork. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, so no huge cyberpunk stuff, but I will give you some recommendations. I mean, obviously you got the big stuff like The Matrix. That's sort of the big things. Ghost in the Shell is a fantastic movie, one of my favorites. Not the remake, live action remake with ScarJo, which is I really need to do a video on the ScarJo Ghost in the Shell because it's a fascinating look at like how close they came to understanding the problems inherent in it, and then completely glossing over that. She was a woman of color, an Asian woman, and then they like put her in a white person's body, and that's like actually somewhat of an interesting concept about like discussing like how we look at beauty, how we think about bodies and race as being different beauty markers. And it could have been an interesting discussion, and they're just like, nah, she's just ScarJo now, and it's cool, it's fine. And there's also like some transgender subtext in there too that I think you could really talk about with Ghost in the Shell. Anyways, why am I talking about the live action Ghost in the Shell? It's a terrible movie, don't watch it. But the anime one is fantastic and has some really creepy stuff, some really intriguing stuff on memory and like who we are outside of memory, what our bodies relate to that, things like that. And I think that there's a lot of cool stuff in there. One cyberpunk movie that I will highly recommend that I really loved from this past year was Upgrade. I loved Upgrade. It was basically a cyberpunk version of Venom, the movie Venom, if Venom was a good movie. And don't get me wrong, I love Venom. I'm there just for Tom Hardy doing crazy stuff. But Upgrade is an actually like decently done version of that with like a cyberpunk twist on it, and I really liked how it goes. And even the main actor, whose name I'm forgetting, is a wonderful. He looks just like Tom Hardy. One last one on this question before I move on, because I don't want to just rant about cyberpunk for too long. Is basically anything by Isaac Asimov, but I just recently read his Robot series. And there's a lot of problematic stuff in Isaac Asimov. I think there's like one point where he like talks about like women's breasts for however long, because male writers from the 1960s, 50s are gonna do that, unfortunately. But it's a great book series, has some really intriguing ideas, and you kind of see how that sort of stuff has developed over the years. Okay, so that's my download on Cyberpunk. Want to make sure I move on to some other questions so I have time. So Maggie Evans, who I also know you're down there in the chat. And also, by the way, I should say I'm loving that everyone is just sending love and live long and prosperous to each other and just saying where you're from. It's, that's the thing that I don't always think about is like how diverse you guys all are. And I shouldn't even say you guys because that's sort of gendered, but everyone out there. Oh my gosh, Council of Geeks. I adore you. Thank you for joining my live stream. But yeah, no, I'm just so happy that there's so many people from all over the world here, and that makes me very happy. Yeah, I did hear Asimov is going to have a series on Apple. Yeah, I still say you guys all the time. It's something that I like try to get out of my brain, but it's still just in there. The rattling around. I did like a panel with a bunch of younger kids like a year ago, and I said you guys during that, and the kids like tore me, not like mean spiritedly, but just tore me apart for it and joked about it. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm old now. Oh God, why? But yes, so I want to get to my next question real quick so I can start answering some of the questions in the stream as well. But this is from Maggie Evans, and your question was, the first video of yours that I ever saw was a video on trans video game characters. Since making that video, have there been any more trans video game characters you think are worth talking about? And I actually, when you posted this question, I had to like really think about it because I did that video about a year ago, and I tried to give like a general overview download of like every trans character, every major major one that I could find and that I could talk about in any sort of discussion about gender. And one thing I even touched upon was like how video games use gender. You can play with gender within video games, which I think is a super fun aspect of gaming and something that like I personally has resonated with me because it allowed me to play with gender. I remember playing like Mass Effect and it being one of the best ways for me to explore my sexuality and my gender. I played as a female shepherd and then dated both men and women throughout that series. And that answered a lot of questions for me about how I wanted to present my sexuality and present myself within that sexuality. So I think games allow you to do that in a really intriguing way that I don't think we talk about enough. There's a wonderful book, I forget the author's name, but it's called Video Games Have Always Been Queer. I would highly recommend that if that's a topic that interests you, because it just kind of delves into a lot of the queer subtext of a lot of things that I didn't even think about. Like someone even, in that book, the author even talks about the game Octodad, where the octopus is like walking around and all your goal is to just pretend that you're a human being when you're an octopus and your controls are very like awkward and weird. And compared that to how a lot of queer people view themselves, trying to hide that they're queer in its space or being trans in space. It's like you feel like everyone knows and yet you're knocking into stuff and being, I'm trans and everyone's aware of this fact, but it's a lot more in your head than you think, but it's also not there as well. So it's an interesting sort of look at the themes of gaming that I really hadn't had a chance to think about. But getting to your question, so more trans video games that I have seen recently. I know Celeste is one of my personal favorite games from 2 or 3 years ago. Thank you, John Grigas, by Bonnie Ruberg. I love that book. So please check it out. And thank you for donating. That honestly means a lot. Thank you. Yes, so Celeste is a game with a trans protagonist, but it's not explicitly stated. And that trans protagonist, like you get hints, like there's a picture of her on her desk in one of the cutscenes where it shows that she was presented as a boy when she was younger. There's other little hints here and there that I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically that character is trans and the studio hasn't really mentioned it, which is, in my mind, both positive and negative. I think there is a lot of positivity to having just a character just be trans and not really drawing attention to it or making it a big point of anything. And also that game is so much about like PTSD and trauma and anxiety as well in that game. And I think that's themes that are universal to anyone, not just queer people or trans people. but is something that also uniquely affects the trans community disproportionately more for a myriad of reasons. So I think using a trans protagonist in that type of story is phenomenal, and it's a phenomenal game. However, the fact that that game never really explicitly it's very, 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 very subtle, and it's very hard to pick up on the character being trans. Like, I didn't pick up on it. I found it on Reddit or Twitter a few times later about that game. So I wish we had a little bit more. It was a little bit more obvious, so that it could be a little bit more subtle, if it makes sense. It was a little bit more there, so that people could find it even if they weren't looking for it. But so, like, an average person may pick up on it here and there, but that it wouldn't be so in your face. And also, there is a need for more trans representation, explicit trans representation, which is in my next pick, which is The Life is Strange people, Don't Nod, are coming out with a game that's coming out in like a year or so. I love the Life is Strange series, also queer representation there, and they're coming out with a new game that has a trans male character. And we don't get any trans male characters really at all. In any work of fiction, which is unfortunate. I wish we got more trans masculine characters, especially in gaming. So I'm really excited for Don't Nod's new game there, but can't really speak much to it because it's not there. All right, I'm gonna move on just because I know people are asking me questions and I want to make sure I get to them. So this one's from Mari Nekar. Here's something from my weird little brain. What do Federation starships smell like inside? One of my favorite throwaway moments in Star Trek Voyager was in the episode Distant Origin, when the Voth scientist first beamed aboard the USS Voyager. The first reaction was one of them was something like, "Ew, what's that stench?" I don't know what voice that I just did, and the other responded, "Well, they are mammals after all." This to me was hilarious and true eye or nose opening. I had never thought about it before, but given that they are sealed environments with artificial air, Federation starships must have some kind of signature scent. Yes. And I believe, I don't know if it was you, but someone sent this to me as a question also, which is like interesting that this is cropped up a few times. I don't know what Federation starships would smell like. I feel like Klingon ships would smell like a butcher house, but like one mixed with like a haunted house because they have all that freaking like fake fog on Klingon ships. But Federation ships, I just imagine being sterile, just very like sterile, kind of like a hospital that's like room that's just been cleaned really well. So that's like that's like what I would think that it would be. But then again, like I forget the Distant Origins, the Voth scientists, they must have like a heightened sense of smell because I'm sure mammals smell awful. I mean, I know I smell awful. I'm sure to whatever alien race. That might be like one of the most something that we don't really think about actually, honestly, in science fiction is smell. Like smell is such a powerful scent, and yet we never really think about it when we write fiction. And I'd be curious to see more stories that are like, when we meet alien races, stench plays a huge role in that first contact situation. That would actually be a huge, actually something that I wonder if there's probably definitely books about that, but I'm curious if there is more stuff on smell out there. If anyone has any recommendations for smell stuff. Why do I exist? I just realized I'm asking a stream full of people about smell science fiction stuff. I love it. I love my life. This is wonderful. All right. Well, thank you to Maggie, Wellington, and Mari. I know at least two of you are in the chat, so thank you very much for those questions. Mari, I don't know if you're in there or not, but if you are, or if you're watching this later, thank you for your question. It was wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go back through the chat and start answering some questions and hopefully catch up with where you guys are now. I know one of the questions early in the other stream before I had to reboot it was someone asked my thoughts on the Star Trek Picard series. I have to say I am super, super pumped on the Star Trek Picard series, and for a myriad of reasons. And there's some things that I'm kind of reticent on as well. I'll start with the reticence so I can end on the positives. One of the problems that I have with, and again, this is from someone who likes Star Trek Discovery and who's very excited for Picard, but one of the things that I have a problem with a lot of science fiction franchises nowadays is that there's a tendency to want to go back and just sort of reiterate themes and ideas that we've already seen. Like with Discovery, I do like Discovery, but I think one of the biggest failings of the show, and one that they're thankfully moving past, this is a little bit of spoilers for Discovery if you haven't seen season 2, just a tad one. But I do like the fact that, or I should go back, Star Trek Discovery's biggest mistake, in my opinion, especially during the first season, was setting it during Kirk Spock era. Because it reeked of like, we're not confident in what we have to say, and so we need to set it in something familiar. And they do this a lot in like, Star Wars as well. Like the Star Wars Force Awakens was just a reaffirmation of A New Hope. And as much as I liked that movie, it wasn't really doing anything crazy plot-wise. Expanding the universe is a plot. In fact, it was actually limiting the world because it was just saying like, oh yeah, the same cycle happens all over again, instead of kind of exploding it out in a new way. And I understand the tendency to want to do that because it feels like, oh, we should go back to what makes this series great. But I also think it just limits your ability to tell interesting stories, and you can expand upon the themes of something, the ideas of something, without limiting it to like the same basic stories. So getting to Picard, one of the reasons I'm reticent is that it is so focused on Picard. And I was very excited to see like, oh, we're finally getting a series that's set after Nemesis, that's further in the timeline, that can kind of expand out this universe that we've been wanting for, I think whenever Nemesis came out, which was 2008 or 9. And so I was excited about that, but then one of the things that has me hesitant is from the trailers, we're getting a lot of stuff that is recycling characters and plots. Like, again, I love Picard. I adore 7 of 9. I'm so excited 7 of 9 is back. I love the Borg, but I'm curious to see, and I hope that they take these elements of the Borg, the Romulans, and expand upon them in a way that feels new, instead of doing it in a way that feels like a reaffirmation of something. And I will give Star Trek credit. Star Trek Discovery, while it was set in the 23rd century, both seasons has done some completely new things. And I think the only limiting factor, especially in the first season, was the fact that it was set during the 23rd century. You're right. I think it is 2002. I have no idea. When did I discover Star Trek Nemesis? Was my first contact with Star Trek, and it must have been like, I just did a whole video on Star Trek Nemesis, and I can't even remember when it came out. Anyways, but yeah, no, I'm very excited for Picard. I just hope that they expand it in a way that feels like a natural progression instead of a regression. And judging from the trailers and from things from that, and from things that Patrick Stewart has said about wanting to do new things with the character, not wanting to just be back in the uniform, things like that, I think that they're doing that. So I am excited about that. I'm very pumped for it. I can't really say much more. I do have a few things that I actually know about Star Trek Picard, so I don't want to talk too much about it. So that's not me being like, I know things. I live in LA and I know some people. That sounds really name droppy. I'm sorry. I hope that doesn't sound like a jerk. I just do know some things, so I don't want to spoil for anybody. And I don't know all that much. I just know a few like not plot things, characters that are showing up that I'm excited about. The Enterprise E is right here. Texas Ranger. Sorry, I like this thing. It makes me happy. Okay. So someone asked a question about Watchmen. I hope to do a video about Watchmen. It might take me a little bit longer than I anticipated. It might be like in February, March, just because my timetable, because I'm moving and things like that. But I want to talk about Watchmen real quickly. Holy crap. Watchmen was amazing. I think one of the best shows. Council Week should be out in LA. That's awesome. I didn't even know what Gallifrey 1 is. I'm assuming that's a Doctor Who convention. I would assume. Why would that not be that? Cool. Yeah. No. I would love to. If you. I don't even know what I'm trying to do. Council. If you're going to that convention, and if I get a chance, I would love to say hi and meet up at some point. Because I love your work. Anyways, I don't want to derail the conversation. What was I talking about? Watchmen. Fantastic show. I think it's probably one of the best shows to discuss and handle really prescient political topics today that I have seen. And the fact that it was done in sort of a geek context makes me just so happy for it. I think I think I'm trying to figure out where I want to start with Watchmen because there's just so much in there. And I think the place that I have to start is because it's basically what it's all about, is just really talking about how well it handles, in my opinion, as a person who is white, how well it handles topics of race and how well it sort of dives into uh, how race has been so is so omnipresent in our discussion today, and yet we don't want to reconcile with that. How we don't want to discuss race at all. Sorry, and yeah, I apologies. Yeah, well, Marcus, I won't discuss anything specific. If you don't want to, if you don't want to mute, you don't have to mute. I'm not going to talk anything specific about the plot. I just will say that it does handle race in a really intriguing way. One of the things that I do find intriguing that I have not seen enough of, and this is my failing for not researching enough, is I do want to see how people respond to the fact that the showrunner, Damon Lindelof, who ran Lost, and myself are not people of color. I'm white. I'm very white. And I'm sort of curious to see, how people react to that the showrunner is a white person. And there obviously are a lot of people of color in that writing room. He's not the only one writing it, very clearly. But I did find it interesting listening to his podcast where he's discussing the show, Damon Lindelof. And he has like such an uncomfortability and comfortability with discussing topics of race. And I think he does such a really good, and goodbye, continuing track. It was really nice to see you here. Thank you so much for joining. Have a happy new year to you as well. You are wonderful. But yeah, so I know I'm kind of ranting in a weird way now, but there's something that I find intriguing about the fact that, I don't even know what I'm ranting about anymore. I kind of lost my track there. But anyways, Watchmen, go watch it. It's a great show. I think it does a great discussion on race relations, but also does so in a really cool way that I think uses science fiction and the Watchmen world in a way that's basically what I was talking about with Picard. Watchmen is a show that does not feel like it's redoing what the old Watchmen was doing, but it's still expounding upon the same themes that are there. So I would really, really highly recommend anyone go and watch Watchmen. Gosh, I'm saying that all the time. All right, I'm going back through to see what else other people have asked. And if you guys have any questions, again, you guys, I did it again. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'm going to try and get to them. And apologize if I'm a bit stilted on this live stream. This is the second time I've ever done a live stream, so please stick with me if it's if it's kind of messy here or there. Trying to find a question real quick. I guess since I was talking about, and I'm going to give my kind of no spoiler review here. Of Star Wars. I'm going to quick talk about it because I know a lot of people were talking about it earlier, and I really, really, really want to talk about it. And I'm going to be doing a whole video on it to plug future videos. I am going to be doing a whole video on Star Wars coming up in 2 weeks. It depends. I'm filming it after I turn off here. I'm actually going to be filming my Star Wars video. So depending on how long it takes me to edit it, I will have that up relatively soon. But to give my non-spoiler thoughts on Rise of Skywalker, I actually really adored that movie. Quite a bit, actually. I am not the biggest Star Wars fan. When I say not the biggest, I mean I've seen every movie, every TV show, and read just a few of the books. So, I mean, it's not something that I hold. I have seen and watched pretty much all of Star Wars. And some of the like expanded universe book stuff, little less on the comics, and played a lot of the games. But it's not something that I like really ever held super close to my heart. It never really spoke to me specifically, just because Star Trek did more, and that's perfectly okay. But it never spoke to me too much. But I was so excited about the Star Wars movies once Disney took them over, and after Last Jedi, and less so, like I liked The Last Jedi. I liked Last Jedi. I didn't love it. There were certain things that I liked and certain things that I loved. And both the things that I liked about it, people seem to hate, and things that I hated about it, people seem to love. So I don't know. But after all the vitriol that came out of that, and then just everything that sort of happened with Disney and people just sort of turning on Disney. And again, I have a lot of problems with how Disney has handled the property. But I just didn't think I was going to care about Rise of Skywalker. I had lower than low expectations. I didn't even go see it opening night, which is something that I do pretty much for all those big type films. And to be fair, there was a little bit of like one of my best friends who was visiting for Christmas. He and I were going to go see it together, so that was part of why I delayed it. But yeah, normally I go and see it right away. So I just didn't expect to like it, and I think that really helped me when going in is because I didn't expect anything, and so everything that I got out of it was really, really fun. And without spoiling, I think that this movie, if you're going in expecting a movie that is like really deeply world building, really thoughtful expansion of the Star Wars universe, you're not going to get that. And that's unfortunate because I do think that a lot of other older Star Wars films do have like really strong, like piece by piece world building, and that just sort of expands upon the world and like builds it very slowly, but in a way that feels intriguing and interesting. Whereas this movie's just like, yeah, no, we're going to bring back Palpatine and crazy stuff's going to happen like in the first 5 minutes. And none of it's going to make any sense whatsoever. And if you're not on board for the craziness that is, that it happens like in the first 5 minutes and then continually for the rest of the movie, you're not going to like it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And if that's not what you like out of your Star Wars, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, because if let me put it, if something like that had happened in Star Trek, I probably would have been a bit more upset if they were just like, yeah, we're just going to like blow up the universe, blow up all the rules and just do whatever crazy stuff we want. Which some people have argued happens in Discovery, but I don't believe that. But that's a whole different topic. But yeah, no, it kind of explodes in a weird way. And I was down for it. I was like, you know what? I'm down for this. This is fun. And when I got into that head mode, it really made the movie just work for me in a way that just felt a lot of fun, super intriguing. Margaret Evans, Maggie, your name is Margaret Evans here. Which do you prefer? If you, because I want to make sure I refer to you properly. But Maggie, you said Rise of Skywalker has completely different philosophy from The Last Jedi. What do you think? This is something I'm going to get into my review and my video, and I don't want to spoil too much on the stream for people. But I actually disagree with the idea that Rise of Skywalker blows up The Last Jedi, that it just like completely is a retcon of Last Jedi. In fact, I would argue that Rise of Skywalker can only happen because of The Last Jedi. That The Last Jedi only exists. Rise of Skywalker can only happen because Last Jedi worked so well. And I can't really get into why without spoiling, and I don't want to do that here for people who are just listening and don't want Rise of Skywalker stories. True Empress who rules her with her obsidian throne. I adore that. Oh my gosh, that's now what I'm going to keep in my brain for you. But yes, no, I don't think it retcons Last Jedi. People can disagree with me, and that's perfectly all right. If you feel like it did a disservice to what Rian Johnson did, I understand that. But for me, I think that thematically, it actually does the best that it can with The Last Jedi, because it's really hard to do. I just do not relish JJ's position at all, having come into The Rise of Skywalker, because his film is such a construction of what Star Wars was. Like, after the prequels, this is what Star Wars is, and we know what it is. That's what Force Awakens was. And then The Last Jedi was like, that? We're blowing that all up. We're going to set it up so you can't do any of that. And so then it's like, what do you do with your last movie of the trilogy? What was this trilogy trying to say? Like, the last movie in trilogy has to be this conclusion thematically to all that. And then it was also has to be a thematic conclusion to the entire saga. So it's has to like do these completely different things. And it's like, how do you do a construction, deconstruction? What follows is like, you have to do something new, which is what I like. But then it also has to be a completion of 9 film sagas. So it has to be an honoring of everything that came before, while also, just inherently because of the setup before it had to be something completely new. Those are completely different asks. And I think the movie does as well as it can with that. So that's sort of my thought on The Last Jedi. And I'll get it more into my specifics of why I think it works well coming off The Last Jedi in my video, without spoiling, but I think it really works. So let me just go back, because I saw a few other questions that I want to make sure I get to besides just ranting about Star Wars like the rest of the internet for a long time. Where was that question? I know I saw one that I was like, oh, I would love to answer that. Now I can't remember what it was. Well, okay. So there was a question here, and I'll talk a little bit more about Star Wars. Feel free to ask more questions. So I'm trying to find stuff, but I may have missed it, so I apologize. So if I didn't answer a question that you've already asked, feel free to re-put it back in the chat because I'll try. It helps populate it back up. What do I think Abrams is more suited for, Star Trek or Star Wars? That's an interesting question that I found that actually is super interesting and intriguing. Because I think he brings different strengths to both franchises and different weaknesses. With Star Trek, J.J. Abrams was not a Star Trek fan when he came into it, which I think actually really, really helped him. And actually, interestingly enough, some of the best Star Trek movies, and really Star Trek anything, are written by people who do not care about Star Trek, who did not care about Star Trek before joining it. I believe Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6, which are arguably the best Star Trek movies, definitely the best Star Trek movies of the original cast, famously was not a huge Star Trek fan. And he made some of the best work that you can possibly do on Star Trek. And then you have Star Trek 5, which is led by William Shatner, who someone deeply cares about Star Trek, maybe not a great storyteller, which is terrible in a fun way. I enjoy Star Trek 5, but not exactly a great, deep thought film. So it is interesting to see, that some of the best work is made by non-fans. And I think JJ kind of continued that trend with 2009. There are a lot of problems I have with 2009 Trek, but I think his irreverence for Star Trek, while also being reverent for it at the same time, like having a distance reference for it, like being like, I am not a fan of this, so I am willing to explode it in different ways. But also, I understand what it's like to be a fan of something, and I don't want to completely destroy it. So he did this sort of reboot Kelvin timeline thing, and then also still have references within that to the original canon. I thought it was really, really brilliant, and I think he added a unique visual style that someone who was a bit more reverent towards Star Trek would not have brought. And it's something that has clearly stuck with it to today, all the way in through Star Trek Discovery. J.J. Abrams' style has, for better or for worse, defined Star Trek since that film. And I think that, I think he does a great job with that. With Star Wars, but his weaknesses with that is I do think he tends to make it a little bit more Star Wars-y. It's a bit frantic, frenetic, and a bit more action-heavy, which I don't think is a bad thing for Star Trek to be. But I do like my Star Trek to be a bit more thoughtful. And I'm not saying there aren't great thoughts within the Abrams films, especially Beyond, I think, has some really, really wonderful things to say. And I know that wasn't directed by Abrams. But I do like it to be a little bit slower than the Abrams films are. But I don't have a problem with how the Abrams films worked. And with Star Wars, I think being a fan meant he could explore what Star Wars is in an interesting way, but it does make him kind of hard to explode Star Wars, which you kind of see in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. He doesn't really explode what Star Wars is in the way like Rian Johnson did, and arguably Rian Johnson did a little bit too much for my taste. But I think he can. I think he can have strengths in both, and I think he's a fine filmmaker for both. Someone asked, did you play Star Trek Online at all? No, I have not played Star Trek Online really at all, mostly because I try to get into it, and I've read some of the stories that happen within Star Trek Online, and I adore them. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fan fiction in some of the best possible ways. It's like really cool lore exploration within that game. So I love the stories that have come out of it, but I haven't played it that much because I just can't get into grindy MMOs, and that game is really, really grindy for me. And there's nothing against that. I understand like how that sort of works for some people, that like it's just nice to kind of have that sort of grind within a game. It feels comfortable, it feels fun. But for me, I like very story focused games, like stuff where I like, I don't get a lot of time to game much anymore in my life, unfortunately. So I would really rather do a lot more with that time. And so I try to focus on things that are a bit more focused, unfortunately. So that's kind of why I haven't played much of that. The Expanse, that's what I was going to ask. Someone asked about The Expanse, and I need to rant about The Expanse for a minute. Yes, I have seen The Expanse. I've seen all 4 seasons now, and I've read every single one of the books. I read every single book within the past 4 months because I found The Expanse in May. Might have been a little bit earlier than that, but earlier this year I found The Expanse, watched all 3 seasons, and then read all the books. And zero spoilers for that. Holy crap, The Expanse, I think, is one of the best, if not the best, science fiction show on TV right now. I like Star Trek Discovery. I like a lot of other shows, and Watchmen I may even put above The Expanse, but I want Watchmen to be a 1-season show, and that's it. I hope there is not a second season of Watchmen. You could do one, but I hope there isn't. As an ongoing show, though, The Expanse is fantastic. It is just the right level of thoughtfulness, dark and gritty political stuff. I love political stuff, like science fiction politics. Give me all of that. Anything with science fiction politics stuff, that's like my niche. And so The Expanse is like that to a T. But I also really love, a lot of people talk about it being very nihilistic, about it being very kind of like sad and gloomy. But what I like about The Expanse is I tweeted out something a while ago, and I still agree with it, is like Star Trek shows us what we can be if we move beyond our limitations. And The Expanse shows us what we can be despite our limitations. In the sense that, like, The Expanse is a show that very much focuses on how limited humanity is. It focuses on, I'm trying to think, like it's very hard to travel in space. We could die very easily in space. We could, we have to strap into crash couches. If we don't like strap things in, things will come flying at us. We are kind of repeating the same political issues here and there, over and over and over and over and over again. Like, we're still dealing with racism. We're still dealing with tribalism. We're still dealing with terrorism. We're still dealing with, nationalism. These are all like Mars is basically fascism, just 1 inch away from fascism. So we're still dealing with all this same stuff that we just, our lizard brains are just continually just going to be doing over and over again. But there's moments in every season, in every episode, where humanity just takes a moment to say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We have enough information about our past to know that this is how this goes. And we choose right here at this crucial moment to do something different. They do, almost every time. The characters decide to do the different thing, the right thing, the good thing, because they have learned, because they have grown. And it plays that on a micro scale with the characters, but then on a macro scale with the political conflicts. And I really adore that. I really adore that The Expanse does that. That it's not just a nihilistic show, kind of like Game of Thrones, though Game of Thrones does have its positivity as well. But Game of Thrones always felt like it was kind of depressing all the time, and the stuff that you like kind of cheered for kind of like got smacked down a lot of the time. Whereas The Expanse never gives you that setup for like, this is going to be a brilliant, bright moment, but then it gives you that when you least expect it. And I think that that's really kind of beautiful. And so I really think that The Expanse is just a phenomenal, phenomenal series that I cannot recommend enough. Go watch it. The show, it's also one of the few adaptations where I'm like, the show and the books are fantastic for different reasons. I love the books, and there's some really, really smart stuff in there. And I love the show because it tweaks a few things here and there that I think are actually pretty smart, that I don't necessarily like more or less, but I like both of them. So I think they're both worthwhile endeavors. Also, I will say Amos on The Expanse is my favorite character of all time. I adore Amos. He is so phenomenal, and I'm going to do a whole video on Amos, but Amos is wonderful. Pedro, you asked, you have never read any Star Trek books. Which ones are your favorite? I adore Star Trek books, and it kind of depends on what you're looking for. This is going to get kind of blown up now that Star Trek Picard is coming out, but there's a wonderful verse set after the shows and movies that I think are really, really intriguing sort of expanded universe stuff for Star Trek. And I think the best of all of that is the Star Trek Destiny trilogy, which does some really, really amazing stuff with the Borg. And it's kind of like the culmination book series in Star Trek that you would always want. Like, it has crossovers with pretty much every series, including from Enterprise all the way to, Voyager. I think the only one that kind of gets left out is the original series, which is unfortunate, but just kind of necessary based on how that book is structured. So fantastic book series. It is a little bit hard to jump into that one because there's a lot of books that lead into it, but I think you probably could. The Star Trek books usually do a good job of like kind of setting you up where everyone is. So if you have a vague understanding of stuff, you could probably jump into Destiny. But I would recommend if you have the time to start look up. There's a timeline of stuff to read into Destiny, and so I would read some of the books before Destiny to get to Destiny. But Destiny is really the cream of the crop. If you're looking for really good single one-off books that don't require the sort of whole big universe. Some other ones I would recommend, if you're a Discovery fan, I would recommend The Enterprise War, which shows what Captain Pike was doing the year of Star Trek Discovery Season 1. There's also a fantastic novel called Desperate Measures. It's either Drastic Measures or Desperate Measures. I forget which, because there's another one that's like Drastic Hours, Desperate Hours, or something like that. Confusing. But the one about Lorca and Georgiou, that's a fantastic book. It takes place during a key event in Star Trek lore. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's a fantastic book, probably my favorite Discovery book. I'm also reading one called Dead Endless right now. I'm in the middle of it. It's about Culber and Stamets that I'm really kind of enjoying quite a bit. And then I'm trying to think of like other ones that I could recommend right off the top of my head as great Star Trek books to read. If you're a Garrick fan, this one you have to find an ebook because it's a bit expensive. It's just a one-off book. But I would do Stitch in Time. Is a wonderful book about Garrick. It's sort of him telling his backstory. And it's Andrew Robinson, the actor who played Garrick, wrote it. And it was actually like his journals that he wrote as he played the character of Garrick on the show. And then he kind of like made it into a novel. So I would really, really recommend that. DS9 books. I'm trying to remember some good ones. The reboot of DS9, like this kind of feeds into Destiny, but it's kind of its own separate world. There's a reboot series of Destiny books, or not Destiny, Deep Space Nine books set after Deep Space Nine that I would also really recommend. If you can find them. I believe it starts with Mission Gamma. I forget it, but you can look those up. Those are also really great. All right, let's see. What else have we got here? Thank you, RGN World, Drastic Measures, and the other one was Desperate Hours. Thank you for that. Both are good. I think the Lorca one, whichever one was the Lorca one, is slightly better, but they're both really great. What was another question that I saw? People are asking me about Star Trek Continues, the fan film series. I will say I have not seen it, unfortunately. I got really into fan films when I was younger. There was a wonderful fan film series called Star Trek Hidden Frontier that basically fed my entire Star Trek fandom while I was after Enterprise ended. So I was like, all right, I'm going to watch Hidden Frontier. It's everything, and it had LGBTQ characters, which we hadn't had it on Star Trek at that time. So I just adored that series. And there was one, These Are the Voyages, or Continuing Voyages, that I think kind of morphed into New Voyages, Star Trek New Voyages. That was also really great. I need to get back into the fan films. I know there's some really good ones, and I know Star Trek Continues is sort of the biggest one right now. But I need to get back into those. And I know there's the one that has had a really interesting history with CBS. Blanking on it right now. The one that caused the lawsuit and caused the whole fan film thing to change. I forget the name of it. I know someone will say it for me out there. But I can't remember what it was called. But someone asked me, have you played the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game? Well, allow me to hawk my wares a little bit. But I actually play Monday nights over on Lore Reloaded's channel. I do a weekly Star Trek Adventures role-playing with myself, Lore Reloaded as the DM, Lore Runner, and Ket Walski. So all those Star Trek YouTubers who are wonderful people who I don't always agree with in terms of their views on Star Trek, but they are kind and wonderful people, and I really have a lot of fun doing Star Trek Adventures. And my character is a extremely bisexual Trill, because I gotta always play a character that has some gender stuff going on, and also is super every D&D character I play is super sexual, which is hilarious because me in real life is like, I could care less about that stuff, honestly. Not to delve too much into that on a live stream, but yeah, most of my characters are always super sexual. So yeah, if you want to see me play Star Trek Adventures, please go check out Lore Reloaded channel Monday nights 8. For me, it's 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, which I believe is 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, which is how we bill it. So please go check that out if you're a huge fan of Star Trek Adventures or just want to see more of me. Don't know why you would, but if you did, go for it. It's a lot of fun. Ketwalski's character is a Denobulin who is obsessed with with Phlox, which warms my Star Trek Enterprise loving heart. Another question. Someone asked, did you see Red Dwarf? I did. I've seen every episode of Red Dwarf. That is probably one of my favorite science fiction comedies of all time. I'm trying to think of ones that I like better. Like Good Place is probably up there for me. Red Dwarf I really enjoy in the sense that like it's a very fun slacker comedy, but also gets to do some really intriguing science fiction concepts, which is why I love those type of like comedy stuff where they get to like do weird and wacky science fiction comedy stuff, and just kind of do out there things. And I just like the characters just like, no, we don't care about that. We're just going to try and, eat Cheetos over here. So that's a really, really, really good, that's a really, 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 really good series if you haven't watched Red Dwarf. Very funny. A tad dated at times, if I recall. It's been a while since I've seen them. So it might be a tad dated here or there with some references or jokes that kind of don't land anymore just because of, we just moved on as a society. But I think overall it holds up really well. And I think is super, super fun. I have not seen the American pilot for Red Dwarf, Chris. I should watch that. Avenue 5, sorry, jumping around. Anne Iglesias, Avenue 5 trailer. I did see Avenue 5 trailer. That might be the show that was literally made for me. Like if someone went in my brain and was like, all right, what type of show do you want? We want like a political Star Trek show. That's like weird and offbeat comedy. I think Avenue 5 might be that. Now I'm hesitant. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect, but I love that that creator stuff. I love Veep. I love In the Loop. I love his stuff. So to see it in like a sci-fi setting that is very like Star Trek inspired makes me very happy, and I'm so excited for Avenue 5. It might, like I said, could be terrible. Everything could be, but I'm also very, very excited to see where that show goes. So if you haven't checked out the Avenue 5 trailer and you're a Trek fan, go check it out because it might intrigue you quite a bit. Have I seen Lost in Space Season 2? I actually have not seen Lost in Space Seasons 1 or 2. It was a show that I wanted to get into. I probably still will at some point. I just have not yet. Unfortunately, just because there's only so much time in the day. And half of my day is taken up by watching DC Comics CW shows. It's either stuff that I'm doing for this channel, like Star Trek stuff, or I'm watching CW shows, which is terrible. They're not great, but I don't know. The CW shows just tickle me in a particular way. Let's see. Oh, someone just mentioned Section 31 files by Darker Projects. I believe Maeve Page. If you are a big audio drama fan, sorry, this is going to be me being very Bebo, love Bebo. This is going to be me being a super nerd. If you are a Star Trek audio fan and you like darker, creepier stuff, go listen to the Section 31 Star Trek audio files. Fantastic fan production, fantastic story, intriguing stuff. They have a whole serialized arc in there, so good. And then they did a spin-off series I forget the name of, that takes place after it, that sort of continues some of the storylines that they dropped. And I listened to most of that, not all of it. And it's another one that I think it's one of those fan projects that unfortunately, sadly, was one of those that just sort of peters out after a point, that they set up all these intriguing stuff. And then I think people just moved on because it was just, people had lives and this wasn't something that was making them money. It was just a passion project. So it does kind of peter out at the end, but it is a really, really worth it journey. If you like audio stuff. I'm ranting about weird things. I don't know if anyone cares about the things I'm ranting about, but I like ranting about it, so it's fun. There was another one that I wanted to get to. Me love the Burt Lanty-verse. Yeah, the CW. I mean, I spend way too much. I've literally seen every single Arrowverse thing. Not all the ones that like have been kind of into it, like the Flash show, but I have literally seen all of them, from Black Lightning to Supergirl to Vixen, the animated show, to Arrow, to all that stuff. And they started off really good. Arrow season 1 and the Flash seasons 1 and 2, and the first 3 or 4 seasons of Arrow and the first 2 or 3 seasons of the Flash are great. Legends of Tomorrow has been great almost all the way through. Love Legends of Tomorrow. And Supergirl has had sporadic, like last season of Supergirl, season 3 was phenomenal. Because it was so much more politically minded, and I thought it had something really salient to say with that political stuff. So I really love Supergirl last season. And I will talk about the transgender character on Supergirl in just a second because I love her. They're also just like my mindless shows. Like I can kind of put them on while I'm doing other work nowadays because I was like, it's the same sort of drama cycle where it's like someone says something, someone's mad because they're not talking about it, and then they handle it by the end of the episode. And then there's some cool, villain of the week. And there's some episodes that do transcend. Like I think Crisis on Infinite Earths, fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's this crazy universe explosion that I really enjoy, without spoiling for anybody. But overall, I think they're just like background noise. The transgender character on Supergirl, I cannot say how much I love how they handled her. Dreamer. They did such a fantastic job with her character of doing what I always want trans characters to do, where they introduce her character and you don't know that she's trans right away. They don't like being like, hi, look at me, I am a trans character. They don't do that the first episode or even the second or third. But then eventually it comes up naturally where a character doesn't stand up for the rights of doesn't use his position of power to stand up for aliens, like literal aliens living on Earth. And she goes in and says, as a trans person, I need some allies to stand up for me sometimes. And when someone in a position of power has the ability to do that, you have a duty to do that. And so her transness is not used in a way that's like, look at the trans representation, but it's used in a way that feels natural. It's used in a way that informs the choices the character is making. And is not used to like talk about gender, but it's used to talk about something else besides them being transgender. It's relating a transgender experience to the experience of others, which is something we so often rarely do. We always look at in film, trans characters are like, hey, look, the trans person, they're different. Look at isn't it intriguing how different the trans character is, how different their lives are from everybody else? And in this one, it made a connection. It made a connection with trans characters to another entirely different identity, entirely different situation. And you so rarely see that in trans stuff nowadays. You usually just get it as a, look at the trans character. So I just adored that about it. And then there's also the wonderful storyline where you learn that her powers that she gets, and this is a mild spoiler, so if anyone doesn't want to be Supergirl spoiled, there is an episode where we learn that her powers that she has are passed down to only women in her family. And she goes home, and she has not told her family that she has the powers yet, and she has a sister. And her sister, because she was the cis woman, and for those who don't know what cis is, non-trans woman, and she assumes that she's just going to get the powers, but she hasn't manifested them yet. But she's kind of frustrated by that, but she's like, I'm going to get them. Women in my family get it. And they don't even think that, the trans character can have the powers. But she does. And I love the fact that it just said that her gender transcended her biology. And that this power was something that was only passed on to women, and she was a woman. Every bit a woman as her cis sister. And it had some of her family members accepting that fact and some of her family members resenting that fact. And it sadly hasn't done much with that after that. I hope they come back to that storyline. But I loved how they used her character. If you're looking for a great trans character, I really think you need to look no further than Supergirl. Just a fantastic job. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wish to talk about. Any more questions? I'm probably going to wrap out because I have to film a bunch of videos today. So if anyone do you consider Dax a trans character? I'll answer that one and then I'll do some sort of wrap out stuff. Do I consider Dax a trans character? Yes. I personally do. And I can see why people don't consider Dax to be a trans character. But for me personally, I have to consider her a trans character because Dax informed me as a trans person. I've talked about this elsewhere, but Dax informed me elsewhere for many, many reasons. She was the first time that I saw a woman character, number one, separate from being trans, a woman character who was like perfectly like comfortable being feminine, but also badass and strong. And you so rarely get that. You see either get like the like I'm gonna eschew femininity or I'm going to be hyper feminine. And she was a character who was like, I'm gonna wear a dress, but I'm also gonna beat the crap out of somebody. And I adored that about her. It also, you know, there is problems with her being trans, you know, and my thoughts aren't fully coalesced on this because I'm a bit biased towards liking her, but she is very problematic in trans representation because I'm trying to like do a whole download on Dax right now. Probably should have saved this one, but she was very mistreated sometimes by the writers, I think, in a lot of different ways. The least of which, or the most of which, is her unceremonious death at the end of season 6. Sorry, I should have prefaced spoilers. But oh gosh, sorry. Yeah, I need to do a whole video on Dax. I apologize. I thought I would have a bunch to say about Dax, and I do, but for some reason it's just not percolating into my brain as I'm trying to think about it. So my apologies on that. I will answer that question. I would be surprised if I'm not going to eventually do a whole video on Dax. I'm sorry. Yeah, I do wish Ezri had been male. I will say I like Ezri quite a bit. The thing with Dax and Ezri is Dax was always the character who I wanted to be. I wanted to be this like badass, strong, feminine, but still beat the crap out of people woman. But I feel like Ezri Dax is the character who I more am. A character who is still trying to find herself, still like doesn't know who she is, has a body that she did not fully choose. Like she didn't choose to become a symbiote, but she didn't fully choose to become a symbiote, but she did it anyways because that was what was necessary. And so now she has this body that she doesn't feel fully comfortable with, and so she's trying to answer questions about it. And so I identify with that, even though it kind of happens in the other way. I'm kind of hopefully my body is becoming more of what I want it to be, whereas Ezra kind of lost some of that. And so I really loved that sort of question part of her. So I really wish we had honestly gotten more time with Ezri, other than the one season that we did. But for what we got of her, I did quite enjoy her quite a bit. All right. So I'm going to end here. Unfortunately, like I said, I got a busy day, but I will be doing more of these. So I'm going to be doing let me just quick give you some download on stuff. I will be doing these live streams more often now. Probably at the very least, it's going to be once a month, towards the end of every month. I might up them and do them more, especially once Star Trek Picard comes around. So I'll be doing a lot more about Picard and probably Doctor Who and things like that. So be looking for more of these. I'll be doing a bunch more of them, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Things to look forward to that are coming up this week, if I may just tell you guys some videos that I've got coming up. I have a video this week that I'm going to be filming right now that is going to be talking about J.K. Rowling and the death of the author and how we can reclaim Harry Potter from her, but also how we fully can't, and sort of the things in between there. So I would love to talk about that. I also have a video coming up this month about Star Trek Nemesis. It's going to be a 45-minute look at Star Trek Nemesis before Star Trek Picard that I'm really proud of. That's one of the videos I'm most proud of. So if you guys have any interest in Star Trek Nemesis, which I'm not 100% sure why you would, but if you want to hear me rant about Star Trek Nemesis for a while, I'm really proud of that video. So please check it out and recommend and share it. Anything else that I would say that is coming up? Oh, well, that's next month, so I'll save that for next month. I have a video that I'm really excited about Half-Life, that I'll talk about more next month, that I'm really proud of, that I actually filmed in New Mexico. So be excited about that. All right. If you haven't yet, please like, comment, share, subscribe. That means a lot to me. If you want to support me even more, please give on my Patreon. That really, really helps me out. You have no idea how much just having that extra financial benefit really just helps me pay the bills. It really does help. So if you can give to my Patreon, I adore it. But as always, if you don't want to subscribe or if you don't want to give them a Patreon, that's all okay, because I'm just happy that you were here And I hope that all of you, as always, live long and prosper. So, all right. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening or the rest of your Sunday to everyone.